Welcome back, everyone, to Escape to DOS. A friend of the channel sent me this package from 20 hours away. We had been discussing sound cards, of course, because we all love sound cards, don't we? And he had mentioned that he had just purchased a brand new sound card, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, let's look at what is in this box. And to start with, there are a pair of 470 microfarad Panasonic capacitors.
Don't be a sap, Dad. These are just crappy knockoffs.
And they are for another item that is inside this box. But first, this is the star of the show. I mentioned that I was curious about the sound output from this card, because my Sound Blaster Pro cards, well, they generate a lot of noise. And he kindly offered to send this thing to me so that I could try it out, and perhaps write some music with it. You've probably seen this card on other channels like DOS Storm or V-Switch Zero. The card originally came all the way from Sweden, so I'm very, very interested in what it sounds like. It's a copy of the Sound Blaster 1.5. It has the CMS chips, which I have learned to love. But let's dig further into this box and find out what else is inside here. Now, a friend of the channel said to me, I have this other sound card. Would you be interested in looking at it and seeing if you could bring it back to life? And, I love fixing things, so I said, of course, yeah, send it along. This is an Opti 82C931. I have it upside down there, you can't really read it. And there appears to be nothing wrong with this card, except for one thing, and that is in the top right-hand corner, right there. I'm pointing at it. Which is what those capacitors were meant for. Those are the Panasonic.
I know a genuine Panasonics when I see it.
Next in the package is another item that he sent along. And knowing that I dabble in these older sound cards that require minus 5 volts in order to work correctly, he sent me the redesigned Voltage Blaster, redesigned by Bits und Bolts. This allows you to use an ATX power supply that does not have minus 5 volts, and it doesn't take up an ISA slot. And you can see there it's a little bit askew. That's because when friend of the channel was installing it, he managed to push the board a little bit too much and broke 2 of the leads, and that needs to be repaired. A great little device to have in the toolbox. Now, what's next? Oh. Now, I was examining all this stuff with my brother in the background. You might hear him. And this was a real surprise. I was not expecting this at all. Tricks with a marked deck. He later explained that this was surplus from a magic shop from the 60s and 70s. I'm guessing it's probably something like this. Wonder deck marked ridge size playing cards. That's an odd thing to include. Wow. Is it open? And it's never been opened, possibly from the 1960s. Sitting on a shelf. Oh, it's not even open. Wow. Crazy thing to do. Okay. That was a real surprise, and I can't thank him enough for sending these things to me. But let's discuss what we're here for today, and that is speaker out versus line out. We have 10 different sound cards. Starting with the Sound Blaster 2.0, the one that I fixed right here on this channel. Second is the David's ISA Audio Board 3.2. Third is the MAD 16 with the crystal chip. Fourth is the MAD 16 with the analog devices chip. Fifth is the ESS audio drive. Sixth is the CT 2800 with Opal 3. Seventh, another creative card, the CT 3930 with Opal 3. Eighth is the rather generic-looking CT 4100 card. And ninth is the Vibra 16, otherwise known as the CT 4180. And an AWS 64, the CT 4550. 6 of these cards we've already looked at with my frequency analysis video, but these last 4 have yet to be poked or prodded. When ISA sound cards were first produced, they were designed to be used with unamplified passive speakers, just like these on the left and these on the right. The amplification was provided by the onboard amplifier chip on the sound card. There's no internal amplifier in the speaker, and no need to plug the speakers into a wall socket. They were very convenient that way. Convenient like the more recent USB speakers where you plug the USB cable in, and they're powered on with the computer, and there's no stupid wall wart. The Sound Blaster 2.0 was released with a rotary volume control, and with passive speakers, there's just the pair of wires going straight to the voice coil and nothing in between. Well, not long after that, passive speakers were replaced with these, the powered speakers. And these ones even have a subwoofer output on the back of them. But most importantly, because they are powered speakers, they don't require the same amount of output coming out of the sound card. If you had a computer back in the 90s, more than likely you experienced the screeching sound coming out of your powered speakers because you forgot that you had the speaker output on the sound card dialed up to maximum. And even better at 3 in the morning when you wake up the entire neighborhood. So when you finally got around to upgrading your sound card, you discovered, hey, there's a new jack on the back of the thing, and it says line out. And that was meant to accommodate a powered speaker system. The other approach is what they did with the ESS audio drive card. It is controlled by jumpers. It is currently set to speaker output at this point. And that means it's powered by those 2 LM386 amplifier chips. This is my new interface. Well, it's not new, but it's new to me. I used to use this one, and it failed. But I love the preamps in these interfaces. Now, that's probably subjective. After years and years of recording with this device, I decided that I love the preamps. I love what it did to violins, to acoustic guitars, to the voice. Everything sounds much more professional than any other device I've used. This device came out in 2007, so it is nearly 20 years old. And it was replaced by the Duet USB, which is also known as the Duet 2. This device has an OLED screen. I got this one for a really good price, but unfortunately the OLED screen has failed, and I have ordered another one, and I'm probably going to make a video of replacing that. There's 2 methods you can use to record into the Duet interface. The first one is through the microphone input, and the second is through the instrument input. The signal path is pretty straightforward. It goes from the sound card into the Duet, out of the Duet, into the iMac running Cubase Pro 10.5. And that's all there is. So I'm going to start this demonstration with using the ESS sound card to show you what I'm talking about with the noise. To eliminate as much noise as possible, I went through probably a half a dozen of these 1/8 inch to RCA cables. These things are notorious for failing. You know, you end up with half the sound output and it's crackling and all that. Yeah, we've all dealt with that at some point. But this cable is one of the best ones that I have. Now, a friend of mine years ago gave me a bunch of surplus electronic stuff that he had. And in that, he included what are attached to the RCAs. And those are RCA to XLR adapters. They allow you to use the microphone input, which isn't as sensitive, so it's better to use with a hotter signal, like the speaker output versus the line out. The next choice, of course, is the instrument input. And for that, I'm using these RCA to 1/4 inch adapters. And they work better with a quieter signal like the line out. Noise can also be generated by dirty contacts, so I sprayed with contact cleaner all of those jacks. I'm using the Unisound driver, and it has recognized the ES1869, and I currently have it turned to the maximum output, which is volume 99, and the FM is set to 99 as well. So the ESS audio drive is set to speaker out. The Unisound driver, I've got the master at 99 and the FM at 99. The input on the duet is set to instrument, and the gain is 0, as low as it can go. Immediately. So it's overdriving the meters, and I'm getting a distorted sound. So let's compare it to the line-out output from the ESS card. I switched the jumpers. It is now set to line out. When I plug in my 1/8" jack, the output will be quite a bit less. So in the same spot, so the meters are quite a bit less. The way to determine exactly how loud it is in comparison is to use the LUFS measurement. So if you type in LUFS into the Google search, you'll come up with this, and that is loudness units relative to full scale. Now that is the loudness measurement that Cubase 10.5 includes, and that's what I'll be using to quantify noise output. This is the scale that they use when you send a track to Spotify or one of the streaming services. The intention is to match loudness so that one track doesn't sound either quieter or louder than another. By adjusting the gain level, I'm going to try to get -16 out of all my recordings. Okay, so I decreased the screen size here. This is the LUFS meter right here. This will show the loudness level. So what I discovered when I was recording these sound cards is that there is a certain amount of noise that is produced at all times. So what I first began doing was recording with this setup with the instrument input with the duet. I discovered some cards require more gain than others. So if I have to raise the gain up, say to 22 dB, all of a sudden you can see this climb in the noise level that is coming through. So if I crank that up even more, one of the cards required all the way up to 30 dB to be added. And now you can see there is quite a bit of noise that's being produced. And if I turn up the volume on my speakers, you can hear that clearly. And when I was recording my songs, every time you add another track, because in a multi-track you have multiple tracks going on, obviously, and each time you add another track with more noise, the noise just starts to get worse and worse, and I want to find a way to eliminate the most amount of noise as possible. I want the cleanest possible recording. And as you can see at -47 LUFS, it's a terrible sound. So how do you get rid of that sound? The louder the output from the card, the lower the gain. And preferably down to 0 gain by getting the hottest signal from the card. That way the noise overall, like for instance now if I were to turn the gain down, then you can see how the LUFS measurement has dropped down. So let's go back to 30 dB. This is what I discovered. If I were to shut the power off on the computer, that would hopefully end the noise. So I'll turn up my sound card again so we can hear the noise quite well. So at this point, I'm going to turn off the computer. And if we come back here, well, there's not as much, but there's still a phenomenal amount of noise coming out. I gotta turn that down. There's a lot of noise coming out, so it's at -47 right now. With the gain set to 30 dB. I had this before with the Sound Blaster Pro card, where it was making all of this noise even though the card wasn't even turned on. So I decided to disconnect the power. I'll turn this back up so you can hear. So, disconnect the power. A little bit less. Still there. So now it's at minus 52, so it's a little less. It's still annoying, that sound. And just to be sure, I disconnected the power supply from the 386. Right. So at this point, I have removed the card from the computer. I'm setting it on my table here. And when I look at the measurement of the LUFS, it has disappeared. It's currently at minus 75, which is inaudible. What I realized was that when the card is grounded, it suddenly produces that sound. And I'm going to bring it over to the test bench, and I'm going to touch the card on the test bench. And you can hear that very clearly. If I, with one hand, show the meter again, there we go. We have noise. If I remove it, sound is gone. So at this point, I'm thinking, well, how is this even working? And then it occurred to me, oh yeah, of course. It's the video card. So the video card connection also has a grounding. And if I touch the card onto the computer, absolutely nothing. And the LUFS meter shows nothing as well. Why is it making the noise when I connect the ground? It's not on. It's merely just a ground connection onto that plate, which obviously goes into the card, and the 1/8" jack. And it's not a ground loop because I have everything connected to the same power bar. Ground loops are created when you have two different outlets. And if I examine the output, so the noise that it's creating is in this range, where it is 700 hertz. It is it's about 1.5K hertz. That's 2K hertz, and almost 3K is the final little peak there. So it is nowhere near the 60 hertz. As a result, the only way to deal with this problem I've found so far is to have the gain as low as possible. And what I did was I recorded all 10 of those sound cards with the XLR input. That's the microphone input. And from that, I gained all of this data. Let's start with a comparison of the speaker out versus the line out output. To get a consistent result, I recorded the Monkey Island theme, start to finish, and the LUFS measurement is an integrated measurement where it calculates the highs and the lows and then gives you the final result. And what I was hoping to achieve was minus 16 LUFS, and by adjusting the gain control, I managed to get a pretty consistent minus 16.1 LUFS. Speaker out in blue, line out in green. In order to get minus 16 LUFS, I had to crank up the gain 6.3 with the Sound Blaster 2.0, and the card all the way from Sweden only needed a boost of 3.2. The Crystal MAD 16 chip was zero gain, and I had to turn down in software, I had to turn the volume down. And I used the same driver for the MAD 16 with the analog devices. Same thing, it was 0.3 gain, and I had to turn down the volume in the MAD 16 driver. And everybody's favorite card, the ESS 1869, I had to reduce it by minus 0.3. The fine tuning, I did that in Cubase. The first of the Sound Blaster 16s, the CT2800, I had to boost it by 9 dB. That enormous 3930, I had to crank that up 9.8. The CT4100, that was a little bit less at 9.3. And the CT4810 was a tiny bit less at 9. And much to my surprise, the AW64, the 4550, doesn't even have a speaker output. They omitted the amplifier. Let's look at the gain levels required on the line out. Now keep in mind, I'm still using the microphone input, which requires more gain to boost my level to get it up to that minus 16 LUFS that I'm looking for. But it works perfect for this speaker out versus line out gain comparison. And because there is no line-out option on the CT1350B, we go directly to number 2, which is the Swedish card, and surprisingly, it required 30 dB. And when you have to boost the volume, that means you're boosting the noise as well, and we'll look at that in the next chart. Card number 3 only needed 16 dB. The MAD 16 with the analog devices was 19.5, 17.5 out of the ESS. The first of the Sound Blaster 16s needed all the way up to 26. The CT3930 needed a boost of 27.7. The 4100 was down to 20.6. The CT4810 climbed up to 22.6. And inspiring no awe, the CT4550 was all the way up to 25.3. So there's quite a range of different output levels. Either it be the speaker output or the line out. And surprising to me, that MAD 16 with the crystal chip turned out to be the loudest of all the cards. And a bit of a disappointment was the brand new card from Sweden. The speaker output is fine, but when it comes to the line out, it required the most amount of gain. So let's look at the noise that was produced by the speaker output. Now in this chart, the lowest possible number is the best. And that goes to card number 3 at a minus 76.8 LUFS. And that's because the gain was at 0, and I also had to reduce the volume in the software, which when you turn the volume down, it actually turns the noise down as well. Coming in second is the Swedish card, and that's at 74.7. Now, these are barely audible. They don't even register on the LUFS meter. And the noisiest card is the CT1350B. But the rest of the cards, I can live with that amount of noise. But keeping in mind, this is the speaker output. And you'd assume that the speaker output would be the noisiest as opposed to the line out. Let's have a look at that. So as a direct result of having to crank the gain up in order to get these tracks to be at minus 16 LUFS, and because of all that hiss that gets created as soon as the card is grounded, using the line out is really not an option. At least not until I can figure out a way to eliminate that ground noise. But the winner goes to the analog devices card at minus 64.4. And not so awesome was the AW64, which produced the most noise at minus 53.8. And that's followed by the Swedish card, which had that 30 dB gain increase. And that speaks even less for the AW64, because that was only 25 dB that I had to increase it. If you look at them together, side by side, it's clear that there's obviously a lot more noise that gets created with the line out. And that's really disappointing, because I was really hoping with the line out on these cards, I'd be able to get the cleanest, crystal clear sound possible out of FM synthesis. Now, perhaps if there is some way that I'm able to eliminate that noise that is associated with the ground, then maybe these charts will totally change. With the MAD 16 cards and that ESS, I had to reduce the volume in software just to get them to be at minus 16, otherwise they would be way too loud. So that contributed to the reduction in the overall noise. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I tried to get the songs to be at minus 16 LUFS, as close as I could get to that, so the range in that is about from minus 16 to minus 16.3. Barely noticeable. This gives you a picture of the entire thing, the speaker out versus line out, gain and noise. Back in my PC chips video, I explained how I got a whole ton of retro hardware stuff that got me going from this guy that was only about an hour away. And he gave me that MAD 16, the crystal card, and he gave me that, good luck with that. And I've always assumed that it was kind of a cheaper card, but it actually turns out that for my purposes, it's kind of the winner in a way. But before we wrap this up, let's have a look at the waveforms. Just to compare the difference between the waveforms of the speaker out versus the line out. And the only one that really had any difference was this one. The speaker looks a little more compressed, but the rest of them look pretty much the same. And I might do a follow-up video with some frequency analysis comparing the speaker out and the line out, but for now I think we've covered enough with this video. In my follow-up, I think I'm going to try using a Pico PSU with a battery and try to isolate the 386. I don't really need a monitor, actually. I can run it without the monitor when I'm recording. And hopefully that will eliminate this extra hissing noise I'm getting. And speaking of the noise, this is the noise. It was always at the end of the file. I just let it run for a while and let the noise play. And this is what it looks like when you slice it all up and put it side by side. And another big thanks to a friend of the channel who sent me David's ISA Audio Board 3.2 so I could experiment with it, and I actually wrote 3 brand new songs with it. I'll feature those in an upcoming Just the Music Part 3. And when the world is getting you down, you can always escape to DOS. See you next time.
Wait a minute. This isn't my world. Disappear!